I'm delighted to welcome Adam Wallin to our webinar, and very much looking forward to his presentation. Adam Wallin is working for We Don't Have Time and is involved in environmental communications, has been for a while, and has been also working, I think, doing quite a bit around COP27 recently. So we're looking forward to hearing a bit about those things. But Adam brings a youth perspective to these matters and an effort to organize a youth perspective for impactful change in the direction of protecting the Earth's climate and environment. So Adam, why don't you take the floor and give us a little bit of insight into your work and your views on some of the issues that we're talking about today.
Thank you very much, Aaron. So let me just get my everything sorted perfectly. All right, so I'm gonna get right into it, basically. And as myself being a young European, or at least I consider myself to be, I'm 27 years old, so I still consider myself as a part of the youth. It's easy for us to look at the future with uncertainty and of course also worry sometimes, and that is a natural reaction to the way that the world is developing right now. But to bring some figures into it, I found a survey made by the organization Eurochild in 2019 called The Europe Kids Want, where they surveyed people up to the age of 30. And they found that almost 90% of youth in Europe worry about the future in one way or another. And I feel like, from my perspective, I can definitely see that. From what I hear from my peers, we follow elections, national elections, we follow climate conferences like COP27 with interest and almost anxiety. And this survey also showed that climate is one of the top concerns for youth in terms of their future. And the EU has a significant responsibility and potential to solve this. Actually, almost half of youth respondents think that the EU should protect the environment to improve their life in the future. And the European Green Deal is, in one way, proof that the EU listened, because as many of you might know, the EU Green Deal was adopted in 2020 following the huge protests in 2018 and 2019 that were led by the Fridays for Future movement. And those protests were very noticeable in, for example, Germany. They were cited as a significant contributor to the Green Party's success in their election. And Germany was also the country that had the presidency when the European Green Deal passed. So there's no doubt that youth engagement played a significant role in the adoption of the European Green Deal. But there's also a big challenge here that I found in this survey, and that is that around 2/3 of youth replied that they are unhappy with the way cities and towns interact with them. And this is in terms of including them in decision making, for example. And now this survey is from 2019, so it's from before the Green Deal. I haven't found any updated surveys, but I can say from what I've seen personally, many youth activists around the world, and probably also in Europe, still feel very much the same way in terms of how they are treated by the people in power. So the problem for youth activists are often that they are invited to at most have a keynote speech or something at climate conferences or in parliaments as a way to inspire decision makers to make the right decision for the future. But when it comes to the day-to-day decision making and implementation of climate action, many young people still feel left out of this. And if you consider the potential here, they really shouldn't, because the people who are between 18 and 35 today are the people who will be mostly working and educating, and in some cases actually be the ones to take the decisions in 2030, when we are supposed to have reached a 55% reduction of emissions in the EU. So the earlier we can involve them in implementing the Green Deal, the better. And this is where I think that the intersection between youth and the European Green Deal becomes so interesting, and where there's a lot of potential. And I'll get to some of my thoughts for how we could solve this. But first, let's talk a little bit about me, just so you know why who I am to say these things to you. So my name is Adam Wallin, and I'm the head of climate dialogue at We Don't Have Time. And We Don't Have Time is a tech company aiming to open up and develop a climate dialogue about climate action and climate solutions across the globe. So we have developed our own technology, our own communications network, where you can, through your browser or through our app, you can read news about climate solutions, you can interact directly with the community of climate change makers, and you can use the power of the many to reach out to companies and world leaders to accelerate their climate action. So by creating this space where we can have a dialogue across sectors, across age groups, and across national borders, we are making it easier to come together and to demand faster action from decision makers. And we also, of course, take a lot of what's happening in our platform and communicate it externally, using social media and other platforms to do so. And in our communication, we want to focus on the solutions that already exist when it comes to delivering on the climate targets, moving from targets to action plans. And reflecting this onto the European Green Deal, I think this is an important factor to involve as many people as possible, talk about the specific actions that need to be taken on all levels to achieve the honestly very good ambitions that the Green Deal presents. And if we do that, we can make it happen faster. So if we want to figure out how we act on a national, regional, local level to get everyone engaged, we need a dialogue. And one way for us to have that dialogue and include youth is during our climate broadcasts. So we had one, as Aaron mentioned, during the UN Climate Conference COP27 that took place just over the past 2 weeks. We broadcasted over 100 hours produced from Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt of inviting representatives from companies, governments, civil society to build this dialogue and to help them give their perspectives on climate action. And these people came from all over the world. And we do this broadcast almost monthly. We actually did a broadcast this summer with Frans Timmermans of the European Commission, together with the European Commission, where we opened up a dialogue between him and young people in Stockholm and digitally all over the world. So this is what we're really trying to do, to take these important events and invite different perspectives from youth and from other perspectives that aren't normally heard in these contexts. And this is something that we're hoping to do more with the European Commission over this coming year. So to kind of finish this off a little bit with some solution focus. So what can we do today as young people to help the European Green Deal reach its goals, basically? And to answer this question, I want to go back to my example of Fridays for Future, because as I mentioned before, the movement had great success in Germany, but in Sweden, the movement didn't take off in the same way. And no one's really dug into why this is, but I have a theory that the national discussion in Sweden about the climate is quite different than many other places in the world. In Sweden, media has for years reiterated again and again the problem of climate change and what causes it, which is very similar to the messaging of Fridays for Future being very problem focused. And that's not what the Swedish people and decision makers need. They need to be educated on the solutions and informed that the people are ready to work on these solutions. So I guess my best tip for anyone who's young people is to figure out what is needed where you live. In some countries in Europe, it's worked well to emphasize that decision makers haven't done their job to safeguard our future, and to, through protests and campaigns and other political action, make that clear. In other countries, it's worked to go to court over specific climate inactions. And in some countries, it's better to look to your local government or local community and see what you can do there. So it's a very vague answer, but we all need to kind of figure out what our circumstances are, what we are good at, and also remember that we will be working with the climate crisis and its effects over most of our lives. So don't work too hard in the beginning of your career, because you need to take care of yourselves as well. And that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.